Welcome, Fam Bam. Today's special guest is Naomi Annand, yoga teacher, author, and director of East London's Yoga on the Lane. She teaches compassion-based vinyasa with a restorative theme. Naomi believes yoga to be a transformational practice on and off the mat, something that gets you back in touch with healing and self-love. I absolutely love the gentle approach and self-care she teaches in her recent book, Yoga for Motherhood, something I frequently referenced during my recent pregnancy. And today, she's here sharing with us how this philosophy led to her recovery from chronic fatigue and burnout. Naomi, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, MJ. I'm really delighted to be invited. Thank you.
This is such a pleasure. I was really very pleased when I looked into your book. I received it for the first time. It wasn't what I was expecting. Having a bit of yoga background myself and really wanting to help women empower themselves through health and energy, it just fits so perfectly. I'm curious a little bit more about your background and what led you on your path to creating this book.
Yeah. I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. Prior to that, I was a dancer. And my approach to practice, I suppose, was I initially came at it through this very kind of discipline lens. And over the years of just, the way that life happens and things kind of come to us that are unexpected. For me, I had some dealings with autoimmune issues. And I just had to really shift how I was approaching my practice and found there to be tremendous benefits from that. And from that, really wanted to share more through writing. Yeah, it's been a really nice challenge to put a practice that I talk about so much onto the page and to have something kind of living on the page that feels like yoga to me. So I'm really happy to be sharing it.
I love it. So one of the things that I noticed in your book was the approach, the lens was a little bit different than what we might experience or think up of when we think of yoga, right?
Yeah.
The book that I received was, I think it was the essential guide or the guide, nurturing guide, was it, to yoga for mothers.
So yeah, this is yoga
And
for motherhood. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, and I loved it because there was a lot of not what you would expect. I mean, it was really hard to put into words, but maybe you could put it into words for us so that people can get kind of an idea of
Yeah.
what the energy and the intent is.
So I have a book in front of me. I don't know if this is going to be visible for many people, but I'll describe it as I hold it. It has open binding, so it has this exposed spine, which is a term in publishing for a book that can lie flat. So you open it up, and on each page you can lie it flat. And the flow of the book is quite different to, I guess, regular instruction manuals, in that I didn't really want it to have chapters. I wanted there to be it to be interspersed with letters and it to feel kind of like a love letter to mothers. So when you pick it up, you feel the warmth and the connection that you feel when, like a good friend is telling you you're doing okay, and it's enough that you're showing up for your kids and you're doing your best. And I wanted to kind of put that across in a book. So it doesn't get too, I suppose, dense. The dense sort of practice notes are broken up with smaller, like little rituals and other, other little kind of practice tips throughout. And it's really beautifully illustrated by my very clever friend, Kate Winter. And I think she's really kind of brought so much warmth through her watercolors in the book as well, which is great.
Yeah, so it was interesting because as I went through it, I got that exact experience you were saying. I was flipping through the pages and I'd read a title or I'd see this letter, and I'm like, wow, I really needed to hear that today. And so it wasn't really, it is yoga, but it isn't really what I would think of as yoga, in that there's this practice and there are these poses. Yes, there are practices and poses there, but what I really felt like was bringing yoga to everyday life, to experiences, challenges, and even a lot of self-care that we might need to, take for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I just really wanted to kind of dispel this myth of, this idea of a perfect practice and this idea of a perfect environment. And I think prior to having children, lots of us come to yoga and really fall in love with the solitude and the sort of, the quiet and all that time to reflect. And then you have children, you're in this kind of what feels like quite chaotic and noisy and very full. So how to invite some of that, some of those things you learn through your practice into the kind of chaos, and how can the chaos, I suppose, inform and be a beautiful, like, other texture to your yoga practice, rather than seeing it as something that you have to push away. So there's little sequences that you can do with your children. There's things that you can do if you do with a newborn baby. There's like lots of breath notes and meditations as well. So just the little things that you can do frequently.
And that's perfect because I think, a lot of us, when we enter into motherhood, be it new moms or, like me, I'm a second wind mom. I have a set of older kids and a baby. It's easy to say, I'll get to that later when I
Yeah.
have time, when life gives me space. And it just doesn't really ever come around. And so we look at yoga as this practice, or even self care in general, as something that I can do when I have extra time,
Mm.
but really it's almost a supplement to helping us create that extra space and time for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really empowering as well, because it doesn't cost anything.
Mm.
Once you have these tools, you can share them with the people that you love, and you can implement them into your daily life. Um, I'm not a very good flyer. I don't really like flying. And recently I was on a trip, and it's on the trip with the kids. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I was just so grateful for having this practice where I could actually get into a zone and where I could be with them. I was very much with them and with their experience, but I was totally with my breath at the same time. I was able to be both, and to really like regulate my nervous system. And even though I did feel as I'm a human being, and if you have a thing that you're scared of, I was scared, but I was able to be fully in the experience, and to keep my kind of heart rate at, at a steady pace, which feels like a real gift to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about that. It might not be. I mean, we do have things we get anxious about. I know for myself, a lot of times there are a lot of things that need to get done, and I start to feel kind of overwhelmed in the anticipation of. It's like holding your breath through the adventurous part of the movie, and I'm kind of looking forward to being able to relax a little bit back in my seat. um, how would one, if especially someone who may not be familiar with yoga or who's only dabbled in it, I mean, how do they bring this awareness and this practice into their normal life amidst the chaos, amidst the stress?
So I would say, rather than recoiling, and it's actually to kind of lean in and to feel and really open up to all your senses. So to notice the taste in your mouth, to notice the feel of, like, is it the texture in your mouth? Is it dry? Is it moist? How do your lips feel? And just really work through the senses. Think about your feet touching the ground, the weight of the body. I think that really helps me. I'm quite a little person, and I'm very, my nature, I vibrate quickly, and I'm a real doer. Like, I get stuff done, um, and I have to implement these practices to keep myself grounded. And one of the things that I think about is actually feeling into the weight of my bones, and really feeling into,
Mm.
like, rather than trying to stand up straight and put my chin up and like feel light, and actually the opposite, like sink into the ground. So yeah, to use your senses, rub your hands together, put your hands on your chest. Um, those when your senses are kind of fully awake, it's hard to be anywhere other than the present. Yeah,
Yeah, that's so good. And I see how that translates from yoga. If you've ever been to a yoga class, when you stand in mountain pose at the beginning of every class, most classes,
yeah,
you're trying to feel that weight into your feet, right?
that's
And you're
right.
trying to find your center before.
Yeah,
And then you end the class and you are kind of surrendering to the ground that's holding your body. And it is interesting because I think that a lot of us want to just kind of think mind over matter, and
yeah,
I think that there's a lot of power in that. But when your mind is so preoccupied with other matters, it
yeah.
can be very difficult to take the mind over that matter and bringing that physical practice. I mean, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more, with how you approach this book. What is the definition of yoga to you? Like, what is yoga meant to be for an individual person or mother
Mm.
or
I,
woman?
I think at its like true essence, yoga is connection, and it's the celebration of that connection through the body, but also through the awareness of that I am in my body and you're in your body and we're in a relationship now as we have this conversation. And at the end of my yoga sessions, something I say a lot is you drop into the body, just really sense that you are this like tiny little drop in a vast ocean of awareness, that you are just one little piece of this incredible body of water. And I think that might feel frightening to some because it's like, it's like the kind of quietening of the ego self. But actually, there's something really beautiful about lying in a room with people that you don't know, that aren't your friends, you have these very neutral relationships with, and you're able to rest and feel safe
Mm,
resting in your body, knowing that they are too, and that we're kind of held together. And for me, like that's the essence of it, really, in a kind of nutshell. Um, and yeah, it was so interesting what you said, MJ, about this mind over matter. I find that so familiar to me because when I was a ballet dancer, that was absolutely the kind of mantra. As I ended my career. I was dancing on a fractured foot for 6 months before I knew about it. I was 21, so I was young. It was fine, but still, once I knew that once it had been diagnosed, when I knew that this should hurt, I was like, wow, I've been mind over matter for dancing on a
mm,
foot for over 6 months. That's really frightening. So I've kind of
yeah,
gone from one extreme to the other, I guess. Now I've kind of I completely desensitized myself in those days, so that I could perform this, beautiful art, which I absolutely love, still love. Um, and now, absolutely, I'm going inwards and I'm fine tuning my senses so that I can um, do very little but feel so much. So,
I
sort of,
love that. Yeah, that
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I really like that connection a lot because I think that whether or not you're, an avid athlete or dancer or whatever, I think that so many of us go into every single day ignoring our senses
Mm,
in order to get what we need to get done, take care of the kids, clean up the house. A lot of us have, side hobbies, interests, businesses.
mm,
And we live in such a fast paced world
mm.
that so many of us, we get to this place where we burn out.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of my followers and a lot of the students that, are in my courses, they're not living unhealthy lives. That's what's crazy about it. It's like, it makes sense if you're staying up late, drinking and eating poorly, but when you're trying to
Mm,
actually have a balanced life but still can't find that balance again, then and I know from my experience, to echo what you say, it took a while to begin to hear my body again.
yeah. And I really hear that in your work, and I want to, really acknowledge your well, your beautiful students and followers that, you know, that I really understand that crash. I about 6 years into teaching full time, I brought my kind of ballet ethos into my yoga teaching, I guess, and I was just full pelt. I was teaching in a heated environment, and I was just doing a lot. I was doing so much, um, and I crashed. And then not only did I crash, I then developed type 1 diabetes, and so I live with type 1 diabetes and also extreme hypothyroidism, so I don't produce any thyroxine at all. So I manage these things, but what I would say is it's been an amazing journey in how I approach my practice, because I had this period of chronic fatigue after all these diagnoses where I couldn't get out of bed for about 3 months. I was really fatigued with it all. Um, but one of the things that really came to me was this to really trust in the subtle and to just start building myself up right from the core of myself outwards again, and to really tune into my breath. And my breath was really, I remember at the time feeling it was really an effort to breathe, when you're that tired. I think you know all about this, but that's, it takes a while to like trust that you're going to expand again. So I would just
Mm.
say for anyone who's like in the kind of depths of feeling that, the tiredness, is that you just really trust that that's almost like a period of hibernation, that your body will then start to expand up and out and from again. And I think yoga can really help you do that. Meditation can really help you do that if you approach it in this way, which is just
Yeah.
full of kindness, basically. It's not about putting yourself into big, big back bends in a hot, stinking room and being, like really physically pulled into positions. It's possibly doing much, much less with a different attitude.
It's so good. I have four different thoughts that come up when we discuss that, and now the question is which to to go after. But um, the first thought was really that there's nothing wrong with pursuing, hot yoga or a career or any of those things. But then the second thought is, where does one find that balance? Once you crashed, where did you find? So I'm interested in your thoughts on that, and also why, if you're willing to share, either why you think you or others feel this need to just continue to go and go and go until until we hit a wall. What is the driving factor? Because I think we don't discuss that a lot. We talk about the problem and what the solutions are, but I really want the root, the causation of the problem, because this is just too common. This story is just so common in so many of us.
Yeah. I think that there's this kind of a social uh, emotional contagion around certain cultures. Like, for instance, if you are a professional ballet dancer, is what I know, but someone else might know gymnastics, or someone else might know, hockey or whatever it is. And there has been a model of teaching and a model of learning that has been quite punishing, and that you and the sort of overarching message is you're never enough. You're never good enough, and that's what keeps you striving. I remember when I left home when I was 12 and I went to the Royal Ballet School. I got a scholarship, so I left my kind of family in Middle England and came to London
Wow.
really young. Yeah, really I've had a very different life, I think, to the one I would have had if I had stayed at home. Um, and things kind of happened quite quickly for me. And when I was in the school, within like a month, we were auditioning to be in the Nutcracker that was on at the Opera House, and I auditioned and I was Clara in the Nutcracker. So I ended up being the kind of like central figure in this ballet. And I think mainly I got this part because I was so innocent. I didn't really have a clue what was going on and just was so kind of open and excited and all of that. But when I got told I was, doing the role, I just constantly, it began there of this constant putting myself down. oh, you're not good enough,
Mm.
you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So that then when I went on stage and I did a brilliant job, I would feel almost like I would feel the space between, which was like, oh, I was right down here, and now I'm right up here. And I think we get addicted to this almost, these highs and
Mm.
lows, and these highs and these lows. And even in yoga, dare I say it, I think we can have these adrenal rushes where we're doing these extreme practices and finding ways to in yoga. There's one of the sutras is um, Stiram Sukham Asanas. So it's about equal um, steadiness, equal kind of push and pull, and yielding. And it's not about always kind of striving. And how
Mm-hmm.
to find ease in effort, I guess, is really the essence of that. And I love that idea. Like, how can we find more ease in the effort? So absolutely, like you can kind of strive to do this wonderful thing and to be on this stage, but how can you find this like middle path, this practice of focus and attention, but not 150%. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but for me,
Yeah.
like certainly for the first, I mean, I'm, on my way to being 42, but, for the first 35 years, I'd say, like through, oh, I wouldn't have known when I was a child, but as quickly as I knew, I was overdoing. And it takes a lot for me
Mm.
to do less. It's only in the last really 6 years and also since having children. So my daughter's 8 now, since having her, having to really practice surrender in such a different way.
Yeah.
And that's why I
And I
think,
think it's oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you go ahead.
It reminds me of just my own experience, and and I'm not sure if everyone echoes this same experience, but I was reflecting this morning that pretty much all the blessings that I have seen manifest, occur, be drawn into my life has not been due to me setting my eyes on a goal and forcing that goal. I mean, some of them, I certainly had a goal and I was very open to that goal and I took action towards that goal. But most of the things it was almost just like an opening up, right? It's kind of like in when I'm in yoga class, and some yogis out there may relate to this. When you feel so tight, it's not about forcing yourself to bend further. It's about releasing and letting go and kind of just allowing the process to happen. And then once your central nervous system feels safe enough to relax, it's just like it's almost this immediate release where you just sink and all that tension and all that discomfort melts away.
Mm, yeah, there's a really, I often think about these things that we talk about and then how to embody them, because they are, like
Yes.
you rightly said before, like they're concepts and they're talked about so much, but how do we embody them? And I think the perfect example to what you just said is, if you were lying on your back with the soles of your feet together and your knees open, and you were just to lie there for a moment and just feel what's happening and where you sense the stretch and the opening. But then if you were to put cushions underneath your thighs and let your legs fall into the cushions, then how does that feel? And for me, it's completely different. When the cushions are there, my body
Yeah.
is open to resting into the support. So I've had to bring in support to lean into, um,
Mm,
which is really, I think, kind of what we're talking about. And then if I'm just there and I'm holding myself, actually what's happening is there's shortening, there's contraction, there's tightening, even though I think that I'm pushing myself and I'm going deep.
yeah.
I'm actually going deeper with the support. So I think,
That's so good.
yeah, like, being really smart about how we bring about and we use tools and we support each other. We're meant,
Hmm.
we're very much meant to be in community, helping each other. And
Yeah.
I think where things can feel really challenging for myself, I don't really like being a sole player. Like the reason I set up a studio in London was to have a community of teachers that I could have conversations with about this stuff, because I don't want to be just by myself, kind of in my own little echo chamber. I want to feel like I can grow with other people. So yeah, lean into your people, lean into the support. I think is a really
I
good
think that's really good because, going back to the idea of that sort of addiction to, doing a good job or getting the high after a hot yoga class. I noticed in my life when I try to do it all, my community tends to think she's good. She's got it. She's fine. And so there's this almost separation in my own personal experience where nobody's really aware. Nobody really has my back. Not that it's expected, but just that I'm on my own. And when I lean into the vulnerability of saying, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, here's what's going on. And it's okay if I'm perceived as weak or overcommitted or lack of foresight or any of the judgments that I might be afraid of to them or to myself, disappointed myself because I can't show up the way that I want to show up. Doesn't matter that we got sick and I couldn't control that, or like all these all these challenges arise. When you lean into opening up and just saying your truth,
Mm.
what I find is, like you say, the people rally for you. Not only do you receive that support, but if the fear is the judgment that you're not good enough and that's would separate you, the truth is being vulnerable and honest actually allows people to authentically see you and appreciate you for being vulnerable and honest. And when people help you, they actually like you more.
Yeah, well,
They
support each other. Right? Yeah, and it doesn't.
yeah.
It's unrealistic, isn't it, to always um,
Mm-hmm.
be the same as well. We are. Everything is cyclical, and we are cyclical, particularly as women. It's very. I think it's really important that we respect that, and that you saying to your community, I'm tired now. I need a rest. I
Yeah.
do that. I take like a week. I just had a week off, and I'll make a kind of point of saying, I need a break, because, and then I usually get 5 emails from sweet students saying thank you so much for for practicing what you preach, because I'm always telling
Mm.
them to do less and to not push and to listen. And so if I
Yeah.
don't listen to myself, then how am I able to kind of support other people? And that's where it's important with kids as well. We think that, I mean, I get completely lost in my children. I love them so much, and I want them to be happy. And at the moment, for instance, my 5-year-old son, he's having a difficult time. He's just for one
Mm.
thing or another. How they have these growing pains. There's quite a lot of noise,
Yeah.
quite a lot of crying, and it's challenging. It's a moment, but there's only so much he can kind of see. There's only so much I can tell him and support him with. But what's really important, I'm noticing for me, is to model behavior that is going to support him. So how do I
Yeah.
regulate my nervous system? How can I practice doing like little breathing exercises in front of him? If he's just had a major rage and things have sort of settled a bit, I'm not going to give him loads of attention now. I'm going to put my legs at the wall. I'm going to, because I'm absolutely spent and I need a moment. I think that's really cool if he then notices that too, and
Yeah.
when you've been in an extremely intense moment in time, that there is something that you can do for your body to process that, because it was hard.
Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with that, that self judgment or that. I just think that we cling too much to being competitive,
Mm.
and that's why we end up suffering alone. And, when you do think of things more as how do I love myself and trust my community and also be that, trusting community member,
Yeah.
by showing up and as my authentic self, whether it's authentically tired or authentically struggling with parenting my son right now. um,
Yeah.
it's just a different world. Like, you exit the world of fatigue and overwhelm and stress and suffering and physical discomfort in the body, and you enter this place of restoration and healing and love and like connecting with others and with yourself. It's just, and it's something that I think is very difficult to articulate, how
Yeah.
to let go of that ego and to shed that, like, it's okay to have goals
Yeah.
and to be you if you are a motivated and a person that wants to do things, but then to back up that support, like you say, that balance between the push and pull.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely essential. And yeah, as you say, like goals, like why shouldn't we? Especially as women, it's really important. We're allowed to be ambitious too. It's okay. But I think when we start to judge ourselves for that, that's where it gets sneaky, and the judgment really
Mm-hmm.
is only impacting our system. You know, it really is. I think most people are just worrying about themselves. Like, when we feel like we have to be a certain way for other people, that's mainly coming from, well, I mean, that is coming from our own experience. So how do you hold that within yourself? Yeah, it's a life,
Yeah.
it's a life's work.
It is. It's almost self-sabotaging in a way, though. I'll share a small story that happened more recently that was very interesting. When I have company, I tend to go overboard and really want to clean the house and make sure it's perfect. So, and the story I was telling myself is, I care so much about people's experience that I want them to just be able to focus on having fun and not worry if there's dog hair on the couch or the floor is dirty. I don't want them to feel any of that disturbance. um, and it turned out that I was alienating some of my friends because they almost felt like they couldn't touch anything because everything looked so clean and perfect that it was, and I'm one of those weird people that have white furniture, white clothes, and so in their minds they were just trying very hard not to leave a fingerprint on anything, and I was perpetuating the stress that I didn't want to cause, unknowingly. And so I think it's just funny how we do those sort of things to ourselves,
Yeah.
um, without realizing it.
Yeah, and being honest about, like, is this for them? Is it for me? Is it? And if it's for you, that's okay as well. Like,
Mhm.
if that's important to you, that's part of your ritual and your care, how you care for yourself. Like, how beautiful! I need to be more you for sure. I need I could I could do with a good clean. Too many books on shelves. I find objects challenging to throw away. Hard, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it is just me, but I like how you say, like, love yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the way other people perceive or receive love either, so
Interesting.
I think that's important. We're always trying to project those things, and I think I think the moral of the story that I received from yoga and what I really connected with in your book is that when you love yourself first, the more important things really become clear,
Mm,
and all the other stuff either dissolves or resolves because you're in balance,
yeah.
and it's not a theory or philosophy. Like, this is this is a very tangible thing that's measurable.
It's
um,
incredibly tangible. Yeah, it's incredibly tangible. And all the stuff that is around kind of interoceptive awareness, self massage, whether that's with your hands or there's like little practices that you can do rolling on a ball. Um, but all that stuff is so potent because it brings you into your kind of deep visceral experience of yourself, which is very different to the sort of slideshow that's projecting. Our brain is sort of projecting in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
one image to the next. So coming more into the deep felt sense of our body, it's different in there. It feels different in there. It's a different kind of interesting terrain.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, you can feel like you're going on an adventure, and it's absolutely accessible to all. You know, there's so much of this practice that you can do sitting in a chair or lying in your bed, and you know, you don't have to be kind of standing in a fancy outfit, you know, on a yoga mat looking at the sea. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You just sit on a chair. So yeah, I hope that it does inspire people to come into more of like that quiet, reflective practice as well. You know, where they don't feel like they need to be told, that they can read a little bit and then let the words that touch them kind of be their own experience.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think for anybody who hasn't tried yoga or is new to a practice, I mean, most of my followers know that I'm a advocate of yoga and self massage, self care. But I really, really like this book. Where can they find your book? To just kind of dive in and get started.
Thanks, MJ. Yeah, I think kind of all good bookshops and you know, just all the usual online places. Um, and if
Yeah.
you do buy it online, I would massively appreciate a review. That's my request. If you feel bad about using, you know, the big dogs, the big online people, don't feel bad. You can just buy it from them and then leave me a review, because it's really good for me to have that exposure. So I really appreciate that.
Well, we will put those links in the show notes and the video notes so that people can find you and access this amazing information. It's just it was so cool. I mean, it's you guys have to check out the book because it is something different, and you feel that warmth, that hug. You know, the book is like a little hug
Well,
anytime you need um, just that space to process or to, if you don't know where to start, it's just your companion, really. So it's just been a wonderful conversation to dive into this on a deeper front. Like it's so cool to take differing perspectives and different practices and experiences and find a way to communicate how we can better love ourselves so that we can carry on and love others and live our lives freely. So I appreciate your time, Naomi.
thank
And
you
it just,
for having me.
yeah, I'm honored to have you here.
Oh, I absolutely have loved meeting you face to face like this. I mean, in the way that we do now, and I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Naomi. And we will hopefully catch you another time.
Okay, take care for now. Bye.
Hey, fam bam, thanks for joining me in today's episode. If you haven't yet, get registered for my free webinar training, Better Energy for a Better Life. You guys voted on this training. I worked really hard to put together some really valuable tips and insight on the fastest way to grow your energy on time, things that you could get started doing right now. So make sure you check out that link and get signed up. Can't wait to see you there.